Susanna J. Dodgson, 17th of May, 2019. I'm sitting in what in Germany you call Friedhof, but since I'm in America, in New Jersey, in Burlington, it's called a graveyard, a Quaker graveyard. Although a lot of these graves don't look Quaker, these big slabs in front, although they're quite modest by the standards of slabs, they're bigger than Quakers normally have. Quakers initially had wooden markers that faded away, so you had a nice playground after everything had rotted away and people were forgotten. The idea is that after death, you're only remembered if you've done something really bad. You don't want to be remembered after your death, after you're dead. In this graveyard, there's a stone to Okanagan, who was a Native American leader. I'm here for a retreat of monthly meeting of Friends of Philadelphia, which is we call Arch Street Friends. Our monthly meeting is at Arch Street, and we meet on Sundays at 4th and Arch, which in our small meeting room, which is right next to the biggest Quaker meeting room in the world, I've been told. And having not looked at all Quaker meetings, I don't know if that's true, but it's an interesting idea. It's nice and quiet here, and a lot of people have died this year, friends, people that I knew very well. Today in Queens, New York, there's a funeral service for Vincent and Gadi, who was a wonderful teacher in Philadelphia, who moved back to his family in Brooklyn, where he died a few weeks ago. When I was at a health fair in the Ibu Church in 2013, when members of the African communities in Philadelphia came up to me and told me that there was a woman crying in Delaware, and her husband had been arrested in South Africa, and she didn't know what to do. She had 3 little children. So Vincent and Anthony, who was from Angola, an engineer from Angola, and Salman Lumbo, who's also from Angola, who spent 16 years in a refugee camp in Botswana. Without finding out anything, they just said, okay, we're just going to fill up a car with food and we're going to go down there. So I had the great privilege of going with them. And I posted a lot of these stories online. There's some nice pictures of Vincent in drsusanna.org. So we got there, and we discovered that one morning in January, this man called James told his wife, I'm going to Africa today. He was Congolese. I'm going to Africa today. Drive me to the airport. Something like that. And she did. He said he couldn't tell her anything. And then 6 days later, she gets a call from the United States Embassy in South Africa saying James has been arrested and he's been accused of plotting a coup against the government of Congo. So, being the way I am, I said, okay, I need to go to South Africa and find out what's going on and go to the prison, see what's happening. I got there, I discovered that 20 men had been arrested. Well, by the time I'd left, I'd known 20 men were arrested. And I thought, okay, 20 men arrested, everyone else was involved in the coup, and James just got caught up in it. Well, apparently that wasn't true at all. No one plotted a coup. Not that any of them thought that the government of Kabila was a good idea. Not for a minute. So, anyway, I went to Pretoria State Prison a couple of times, talked to all the men, and I got to know them. They understood. They first of all thought, well, you must be James' girlfriend. Why else are you here? I said, I'd never met James before. So once I told them that, they was like, oh, okay, she might actually just want to help us, which is right. And it just seemed so great, kind of Joan of Arc stuff. You just show up in South Africa and you make a fuss and everyone's okay. Well, 2 years later, everyone was released. And in the meantime, I published an ebook that was quoted in court before the men were released. And there's this woman in New Jersey, she's published a book about you. So it was very exciting. And Vincent was with me the whole time. He absolutely was supporting the family and supporting my efforts. He understood. When I was in South Africa, he even called me in the house I was staying just to make sure everything was going all right. And he used to show up to health fairs and he'd just take charge. He was a teacher. He knew how to handle kids. I mean, it was just lovely to see. So his funeral's today, and I'm not at his funeral. And I want his family to know that he was really a good man, a very good man. And the world is better for him having been here. Another person that died was on last Friday, May 10th, was Lothar Blosfeld, whose life I shared for 12 years in Germany, in the Black Forest, and in New Jersey. And we produced a beautiful 6'5" tall son and a 6 feet tall daughter. And we don't know anything about a funeral. We don't know what's going on. I do know that he had Parkinson's, and my daughter and I went to see him a number of times, and he was just getting worse and worse and worse. We saw him 2 years ago. He couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, he couldn't even speak English anymore. And I'm not even convinced that he knew who Patience was, because he didn't ever call her by name. So, here I am in a graveyard where people I know are not buried, but it's a very peaceful place. And I hope everyone who knew them remembers them with great affection. Look at these beautiful flowers. Little tiny buttercups. Oh, there we are. It's coming into focus. This camera takes a while to focus. Oh, that's beautiful. So I've written quite a bit about Lothar on peacescientist.org. For a long time we didn't know where he was, but we found him. And wonderful nurses and friends in the Black Forest have been contacting us in the past few years to tell us where he was. And there was a lot of love there for my daughter, who, after all, is a German citizen. So here we are, walking through the graveyard. Okay, these ones here, these are more like the Quaker graves that I know. Look at this. It's quite high, but all it has on her is when she died, which is not much information. And there's a Susan. The ones in Haddonfield Cemetery, they're more like this. Although this is a little elaborate too. Just with the birth date and the death date. No. So she was Eastern Star and he was a Mason. They probably weren't Quakers. My grandfather was a Mason. In fact, I believe all my great-grandfathers were. Maybe not. Some of them were. So here we are, this very tranquil graveyard. See, the problem is that when you have these stones sticking up like this, it means in the winter, when it's covered with snow, you can't ski on it. Haddonfield takes their graveyard very seriously, and the gravestones are flat. And as soon as it snows and there's enough to ski on, first day school is cancelled and everyone's out there sledding down the hill. And the old Quakers that I knew, like one example is the daughter of Henry Cadbury. She stipulated she wanted to be buried on the sledding hill, and she was. So every time children are sledding in the snow, they're sledding over her. Susanna J. Dodgson, peacescientist.org. Look at this tree here, it's huge. Peacescientist.org. Say a prayer for the family and in memory of Lothar Blofeld and Vincent and Gardy.